The bitter cold of Siberia gnawed at the bones of the condemned men standing in a row before the firing squad. Among them was a young man of 28, his heart pounding not from fear but from the knowledge that his fate was sealed. His crime? Daring to dream of a world where men were free from the iron grip of the Tsar. As the soldiers raised their rifles, a strange laugh broke through the silence. The condemned man chuckled, shaking his head at the absurdity of the white gowns they were forced to wear. "At least make them fit properly," he murmured. The soldiers sneered at his insolence, but before the shots could be fired, a rider galloped into the square, waving a white flag. The Tsar had shown mercy, or at least what he considered mercy, exile to the frozen wastelands of Siberia. This young man would one day become Fyodor Dostoevsky, a writer who would probe the darkest corners of the human soul. And among his works, none would be more haunting than Crime and Punishment, the tale of a man who sought to justify the unjustifiable. In the murky streets of St. Petersburg, a young student named Rod Ion Raskolnikov wandered through the filth and despair, lost in his own thoughts. He was brilliant but destitute, his clothes threadbare, his stomach empty. But in his mind, he was a man apart from others, a thinker, a man who saw beyond the ordinary. He had written an article once, an argument that there existed two kinds of people, ordinary men, bound by laws, and extraordinary men, who could transcend morality for the greater good. Had not Napoleon shattered the world and been revered? Could not one act of violence be justified if it rid the world of a parasite? That parasite, to him, was Alyona Ivanovna, an old pawnbroker who thrived on the desperation of the poor. She hoarded her wealth, offering pennies to those who pawned their last possessions. She was nothing but a louse, he thought, a creature unworthy of life. And so, on a fateful evening, he made his decision. With an axe hidden beneath his coat, Raskolnikov climbed the stairs to her apartment. The old woman squinted at him as he presented another worthless trinket. And then, with cold precision, he struck. Blood splattered onto the floorboards, onto his hands. He had done it. He had broken the shackles of ordinary men. But he had not planned for Lizaveta. The old woman's meek, innocent half-sister stood frozen in the doorway. She did not scream. She did not run. She simply looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. And in that moment, something within Raskolnikov twisted. He saw not a louse, not an obstacle, but a human being. And yet, he struck again. The second murder was different. It was not premeditated, not justified. It was pure, senseless destruction. As he fled into the night, his mind began to fracture. The world did not applaud his act. It recoiled from him. And worst of all, he recoiled from himself. Raskolnikov was not arrested. The city continued its business, oblivious to the storm raging within him. But the guilt clawed at his throat. He wandered the streets like a ghost, drawn to the scene of the crime, speaking in riddles to the police, to strangers. He wanted to confess, but could not. He wanted to be free, but he was already imprisoned, by his own conscience. It was Sonia who saw him for what he truly was. Sonia, the daughter of a ruined clerk, had been forced into prostitution to feed her starving family. She lived in shame, but she bore it with grace. Where Raskolnikov had killed in the name of theory, she had suffered in the name of love. And yet, she did not hate him. "You must repent," she told him, pressing a wooden cross into his trembling hands. "You must bow before the people, before the earth, and confess. Only then will you be free." For days, he resisted. He still clung to the belief that he had done something necessary. But the weight of Lizaveta's gaze followed him even in sleep. And so, at last, he stumbled into the marketplace, fell to his knees, and kissed the ground. The people laughed, mocked him. But Sonia was there, watching. Waiting. He turned and walked to the police station. Raskolnikov was sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. The world did not see him as extraordinary, only as a man who had taken 2 lives. But Sonia followed him, settling near the prison, visiting him daily, reading him letters, waiting for the day he would see what she saw, that no man, no matter how brilliant, had the right to decide who lived and who died. One day, in the prison yard, he finally reached for her hand. And in that moment, something in him shattered. The burden he had carried for so long fell away. He saw not a theory, not a justification, but life, fragile, sacred, and filled with the possibility of redemption. And in that moment, Raskolnikov was truly free.